What's going on, guys? It's Sean with the Bitcoin Bros, and we have a jam-packed video. It's an interview. We interviewed Alexandre Laizet, the Deputy CEO and Director of the Bitcoin Strategy for ALTBG from the blockchain group. If you haven't looked into this Bitcoin treasury company, you might want to. He's dropping gems in this interview. They're the first Bitcoin treasury company in Europe, specifically France, to aggressively start to accumulate Bitcoin for their balance sheet. Let's check out the interview.
We appreciate you coming on, Alexandre. We're just going to go ahead and get into it. So what is the goal of the blockchain group, and what is your strategy going forward? What do you plan to do? And are you following Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy, what they've been doing? Are you following that strategy to a T?
Yes, so the context is that Bitcoin is being adopted at scale by financial institutions over the world and governments, and now the US government. And so the blockchain group is providing a form of Bitcoin exposure with a form of leverage in the form of the increase of Bitcoin per share over time. It is the exact same playbook as strategy in the US, Metaplanet in Japan, and we inspire ourselves from strategy and Metaplanet to implement that playbook, the Bitcoin Treasury Company playbook, at the European and global scale. And we've grown by 3,000% since the launch of our strategy back in November 2024. And we've delivered plus 1,000 BTC yield, demonstrating our focus on maximizing Bitcoin per share over time. And so, yes, it is the exact same playbook, and we believe that is the one playbook that provides the most benefit for shareholders and the most increase in net asset value over time.
Nice. Welcome to the channel, Alexandre. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us here. But as the first public company in Europe to actively adopt this Bitcoin treasury strategy, how does the blockchain group plan to increase its Bitcoin holdings per share? What specific methods, such as capital raises, convertible instruments, operational efficiencies, are being considered to enhance this Bitcoin per share model for long-term shareholders?
Sure. So I encourage everyone to go on our website and look at the different presentations on the media section and on the different videos that have been published on Bitcoin Seoul, on Strategy World 2025, and in Las Vegas as well, where we have outlined our plan for the next 8 years. We ambition to acquire about 1% of the total BTC supply over 8 years. That's about 210K BTC, which is of course an ambitious goal, but we work relentlessly to achieve it. And so to date, we have used private placements in equity. We have used BTC denominated debt. We can get into more detail on this after that, because it's the first worldwide issuance of BTC denominated convertible debt. And we have used the issuance of warrants for all shareholders. We've been limited to a certain amount for now, but we have been also authorized to do public offerings and to do fiat convertible bonds. We have not started this for now. This, for example, the public offering requires a prospectus, and so that requires some time. And we have added one tool to our arsenal of financial tools, which is the ATM-like structure, inspired greatly from the success of Metaplanet in Japan, with close to at the market prices, based on the last day closing prices, and to make sure that we can leverage Bitcoin volatility and ALTBG volatility to increase in a more regular and consistent basis Bitcoin per share over time through not only private placements, but also ATM, which is a form of private placement, but in partnership with Tobam, a leading 2 billion asset manager in France that's been leading the way in terms of Bitcoin since 2017 in France, and that has issued the first open-ended fund for Bitcoin in France back in 2017. And so we've partnered with them, and we just announced this Monday morning, 9 June, to partner with them to do an ATM-like structure for about 300 million euros to accelerate our growth. Today we have 1,400 plus BTC on the balance sheet, And so here we are adding about 300 million more firepower over the next 6 months. Of course, this is a capacity, and we'll see how it plays out, but we are pretty excited about this new tool to add Bitcoin more regularly to the balance sheet.
You mentioned the Bitcoin denominated convertible debt there. Could you explain that a little bit? I think that's a really innovative solution that you guys are doing. Also want to ask like a follow-up is if you could explain it, and then why do you think other companies aren't doing the Bitcoin denominated convertible debt like Strategy or Metaplanet right now?
Yes, back in December 2024, we had 40 Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and the objective was to maximize, of course, the growth in Bitcoin per share, and while also have risk minimizing the debt side, and also delaying the potential dilution. And so what we've been structuring is an SPV out of Luxembourg that is able to receive directly subscriptions in BTC, and that is able to hold BTC denominated debt in a way that allows the company to issue the same type of pricing as Strategy's convertible notes, but in a BTC denominated way that allows for completely scalable issuance of convertible debt, which doesn't add credit risk to the operation. And that is massive because in traditional convertible debt denominated in fiat, you are limited to 20 to 30% of the value of your existing BTC on the balance sheet. And so imagine we had 40 Bitcoin on the balance sheet, limiting ourselves to 20 to 30% was extremely low. And so to grow fast, but in a risk minimized way, we have denominated the debt in Bitcoin so that it's less risky for the investor that believes in Bitcoin, and so that it's less risky for the company, because basically the case in which after 5-year maturity, you are in a condition where there has been no conversion over the 5 years, where it would be basically a condition in case of the company failing, in which case the investors is getting back the Bitcoin, but that's of course something we work on to not happen, but still it's a risk. And on the other side is that Bitcoin would have failed basically, or would have completely broken its historical trend. And in this case, it would be even more risky to have fiat denominated debt, because you would have to sell Bitcoin to make sure to be able to repay the debt. And in this case, you would have to just give back the Bitcoin, which would be at a much lower price. And so in this case, it's even less risky than a fiat denominated debt. At the same time that it allowed us to capture the demand that was not addressed by the market, which is the Bitcoin liquidity pool. I mean, it's a $2 trillion plus liquidity pool, the Bitcoin, and with Bitcoin maximalists such as Adam Back, the legend in himself, the only person mentioned in the white paper, and the inventor of Bitcoin mining algorithm, who participated in the BTC denominated convertible note, Fulgur Ventures, the largest BTC VC fund in the world, and as well UTXO Management, who's been leading the way in Bitcoin treasury companies over the world, Cobam, the French asset manager, and Ludovic Chechin-Laurent, one of our board members, and also co-founder of Capital Union Bank, the largest independent bank in the Bahamas. And so that structure is 5-year maturity, 0% coupon, plus 30% of premium on the 20-day moving average of the stock. And to call for the conversion is 30% premium on top of the conversion price, which I just mentioned. And so in this way, it is extremely accretive for the shareholders, even on the pure basis of the fiat price, which has a premium on top of it. And it's extremely productive for the company, because for 5 years, the investor has the capacity to convert at any time if the strike price is rich, and the company has the capacity to convert in the last 2 years, which protects from some short sellers arbitrage that could happen over a short period. And so in this sense, in 2 years, if Bitcoin continues to grow even at an extremely low pace, even with the fiat, just with the fiat devaluation that is happening, then the company would be in position to be able to convert between year 3 and year 5. And so it's an extremely risk minimized structure for people that believe in Bitcoin. And it's less risk for the company, less risk for the investor, and maximized BTC yield because we were able to generate plus 700% BTC yield, so the increase of Bitcoin per fully diluted share out of this operation. And this has allowed us to completely capture the premium that we had over the net asset value of the Bitcoin and to transform it directly and in almost full into net asset value on the balance sheet. And since then, the premium has been recovered, and we have between March of this year, where we issued the BTC denominated convert, and now the stock has done plus 1,000%. And the holders of this convert have subscribed to tranche 2, which allowed them to subscribe to another tranche at 30% premium on top of the over 30%. That has allowed us, plus 2 equity raises that totals about 20 million additional. Between December, November, and March, we have raised about 50 million euros. And then in the next 2 months, so in the last 1 month or so, we have raised 100 million additional. And so that has allowed us to position as Europe's first and largest Bitcoin treasury company, and among the top performing Bitcoin treasury companies, with plus 3,300% growth since the launch of the strategy. We are Europe's top performing stock for companies over 50 million euros, France top performing stock, of course, as well, and the most discussed stock over in France on the investment forums. And we are just extremely glad to have such a great community of investors and on Discord, on X, everywhere. It's accelerating at an incredible pace. So that's why we wanted to accelerate the strategy with the announcement this morning of the 300 million ATM-like structure that we launched.
So just to recap really quick for the Bitcoin denominated converts, just so our viewers have a holistic understanding, it's very important that they understand. So if Bitcoin goes up, investors have the option to convert and get paid back in shares plus 30% premium once the strike is hit. And then when Bitcoin goes down and the strike is never hit, which is unlikely, they get paid in Bitcoin, but the Bitcoin would be way cheaper. So it's 1-to-1 for the individuals that are giving you, or businesses that are giving you the Bitcoin to actually, or the Bitcoin to be able to buy more Bitcoin with. So there's no risk for investors as well. So we want to make sure our viewers understand that it's definitely innovative, and salute for you bringing that to the market.
Yes, so of course there are always risks at the margin. You can imagine that the Bitcoin is secured by Swissquote, regulated bank in Switzerland and Luxembourg. And so, of course, as an investor, if you give up the control of the keys, there are some risks, but the risk always exists. This risk, so it just delegated, but it exists. And then there are thousands of risks that can exist, but from in terms of operational activities for the performance of the stock and everything that could happen. I mean, in all the financial disclosures that a company makes, you have a list of thousands of risks that may happen. But all things being equal as of today, you can see the massive benefit of having a completely Bitcoin standard convertible note, which, as you said, is 1-to-1. And so for the investor, it allows to have no fiat risk. Either you get Bitcoin back if the company fails, and the SPV in Luxembourg is a wholly owned subsidiary of the blockchain group, but it is ring-fenced from the group and bankruptcy remote. It is not collateralized, it is not secured, but effectively it provides the same protections because it's in a separate ring-fenced bankruptcy remote SPV out of Luxembourg. And so in this way, if the company fails, it is fully enforceable for the investor to get back Bitcoin. However, if the company does not fail, then unless there is a sharp and prolonged Bitcoin fall in price, then all probabilities are in favor of the conversion. And so you can imagine that, for example, even at premiums to the reference stock price, the conversion price of the March instrument was at 0.544. At the time, the stock was about 0.4 and we priced it at 0.544. Today, we reached €5. So you can imagine that the probability of those convertible notes to not be converted is extremely low. It is always a possibility, but it's extremely low. And we have already received a demand for conversion from Adam Back, for example. And so as soon as it is converted, it becomes permanent capital. And you can see that with the pricing at 30% premium, then if you believe that Bitcoin will grow by more than 30% over 5 years, then you can believe that this is as close as permanent capital as you can get. And so the very interesting thing about the BTC convertible note that people don't understand is that this is for long-only investors. The investors that take this BTC convertible note, they are not shorting the stock on the other side. They are Bitcoin maximalists that believe in Bitcoin and live on a Bitcoin standard, and they are arbitraging Bitcoin with Bitcoin treasury companies and still having a downside protection of Bitcoin, which is the best of Bitcoin and Bitcoin treasury companies, which is a product that doesn't exist today anywhere else in the market, and which is fully scalable because, as I mentioned, it doesn't add credit risk to the operation, as in the case of Bitcoin falling by 90% over a consistent period of 5 years, because you could have 2 years where Bitcoin trades at minus 90%, and still the company would not fail for this reason. Basically, you need the price to fall and to not reach the strike price for a period of 5 continuous years. And so effectively what we are saying is the risk that the investor takes is basically a failure of Bitcoin. Because even if Bitcoin stays flat, we are focusing on increasing Bitcoin per share over time, every day, 24/7, 365, and we could very well generate a BTC yield that is extremely more important, even on a quarter basis, than 30%. So, which is exactly what basically we are doing for quarter 2 of 2025. And so, if you believe in Bitcoin, then you should be bullish on Bitcoin treasury companies. And if you are bullish on Bitcoin treasury companies, you should take a look at early stage Bitcoin treasury companies, especially the Bitcoin treasury companies that are focused on maximizing BTC yield. And BTC denominated convertible note has proven to be an extremely powerful tool, a nuclear reactor for Bitcoin treasury company to completely obliterate all financial prediction models based on the capacity of the BTC convertible note to fully scale and add Bitcoin on the balance sheet in a way that could potentially completely eat the premium, which is what we did on March this year and what has allowed us to have one of the best performing months to cover the premium, which is the metric that has invented Adam Back and which measures how much time does a company, Bitcoin treasury company, needs to fully capture the premium that is the difference between the market cap and the net asset value of the Bitcoin. And we have achieved about 4 to 5 months to cover the premium, which is compared with our benchmark of about 6 to 9 months and even 16 months. And so, of course, as a early stage Bitcoin treasury company, there are a bit more risks, than a more mature one, but you can also get potentially outsized return, as it is, of course, easier to increase Bitcoin per share from a low base than a higher base, and that this new tool of BTC denominated convertible debt is a very powerful future and fully scalable, and that helps also fully monetizing and keeping premiums high, as you don't create a short pressure on the other side.
Yeah, it's really interesting that Metaplanet and Strategy haven't implemented this yet. I think it's very innovative what you guys have done. And just one more follow up here. Just from the investors that are buying these converts, are these whales? They could buy these converts to generate yield on their Bitcoin. So if just for example, hypothetical, if a Bitcoin whale came to the blockchain group and said hey, I have 10,000 Bitcoin and I want to generate some yield through these converts, could they do that through this Bitcoin denominated convertible debt offering that you guys have? Just hypothetically.
Yes, any holder of Bitcoin can invest into our BTC convertible note out of Luxembourg, and he would get either, if we fail, Bitcoin back after 5 years, or the performance of the Bitcoin treasury company, which, assuming that we continue to execute our plan by maximizing BTC yield, would be potentially far outperforming Bitcoin. And so effectively what we are doing is a potential BTC treasury as a service. And so any type of private entity that wants to take exposure to Bitcoin treasury company type returns, well, the best way to do that is to acquire the Bitcoin treasury company itself. And so what we provide there is this opportunity plus the capacity of having downside protection denominated in Bitcoin against the failure of a company, because basically if we don't fail, our balance sheet is Bitcoin, and so if Bitcoin continues with the trend even at an extremely low pace, then the probabilities that are extremely high to outperform Bitcoin with the BTC per share increase.
That's all makes sense. And I guess I wanted to ask a little bit, are you guys planning on doing normal cash-based convertible debt in the future?
So we have been authorized to do it. However, the partners and institutions that want to accompany us on this matter expect levels of market capitalization that may be higher, more developed options market, and volumes at higher sizes. And so it is not a first step, but it is a potential tool for the future if and when the conditions would be met, both from the financial institution perspective and from our side. We don't need to do it, but of course, if there are conditions that are extremely accretive for our shareholders, we will contemplate doing it.
So, as far as targets go, you've been very transparent, and we've watched a couple of your speeches over the past so many months. And I believe there was a target for the year end as far as the accumulation of Bitcoin for the blockchain group to be between the range of 1 to 3,000 Bitcoin in total, with you guys already having 1,471. So, based on where the company stands today, seeing that you're already in that range, what would you say your personal projection is as far as the Bitcoin holdings? What do you see for the blockchain group by the end of 2025? Because with this raise you just mentioned for the 300 euros, I believe you mentioned there was going to be a 6-month window where it takes for you to accumulate and acquire that Bitcoin. And if that average cost price, let's just throw an arbitrary number, say $130,000 Bitcoin over the next 6 months, that would then take you outside of that 3,000 range by the end of the year. I think my math's right, maybe closer to 5,000 Bitcoin by the end of the year. So you guys are being extremely aggressive based on what's going on present day, and the projections on the slide you're already shooting past. So what's your projections and where you see the blockchain group going by the end of 2025?
When we made the chart, we were at about 600, 800 BTC on the balance sheet. and we made the prediction for a target for FYE 2025 of about 1,500 to 3,000. And 2 months later, we are already within this range. And so the objective is, of course, to continue accelerating, and if we can, of course, to exceed those targets. And with the program of TOBAM, the ATM-like structure, it's an envelope of 300 million euros as a target for the next 6 months. And so if we were to completely achieve this target, and of course it would be even better to exceed it, but if we were to achieve this target with the ATM-like structure, then that would put us, depending on the Bitcoin price, of course, on the far end of the prediction, the target for 2025. And that would be an excellent outcome, or even if we can, of course, exceed the target. And we'll see how this plays out. And of course, we will work as hard as possible to exceed the targets, But the targets are here over the long term. It gives an indication in terms of pace, but the outlook is a long-term outlook. I'm working to build the foundations of Europe's largest publicly listed corporation, and the target is about 1% of the total BTC supply. But there are a lot of factors that we don't control, of course. So the model assumes a potential BTC compound annual growth rate of about 30%, and the capacity for the company to about double its capital raising capacity each year or more. And so these assumptions, we will have to potentially revise them as we go, but those are the expectations that we place on ourselves, and the bar is high, but we have demonstrated in 2 months that we were able to be in these targets even before the half of the year. And so we are accelerating at a rapid pace. We are already in the steps of strategy and Metaplanet in terms of growth since the launch of the respective Bitcoin treasury companies, either exceeding a little bit, benefiting from the fact that the model is more well known to investors and that the Bitcoin treasury company business model is now battle tested if you are focusing on Bitcoin per share over time. And so the predictions, the targets are high, but of course we would be happy to exceed them.
I think that gives shareholders confidence that you guys are not exceeding your target yet, but you have the potential to do that for the rest of the year. So I think that brings a lot of confidence. So one other thing I wanted to ask about was, when will the blockchain group have a ticker in the US and other markets around the world? And do you think that would have demand for the stock price once you get the ticker in other markets around the world? We're based in the US, so that's why we're asking about the United States.
Yes. So just before this, I want to add that the target of the number of Bitcoin on the balance sheet is important. But what is extremely important is how you get there. And how you get there is really depending on how you can maximize Bitcoin per share. And so the playbook is to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible, as fast as possible, but also in the most accretive way as possible. And so we are not desperate. We are engineering the best conditions to be as accretive as possible with the highest premiums as possible when we engineer financial tools. And that's how we will continue to operate. The number of Bitcoin on the balance sheet is one indicator, but for the performance of a company and the solidity of a company, how it is financed matters as much as the number of Bitcoin that is acquired. And so as much as we focus on increasing number of Bitcoin on the balance sheet, we want, of course, to create the most accretive conditions for this to happen. And we believe that if we create the most accretive conditions as possible as we go, this will on the other side, increase our capital raising capacity as well to reach and potentially exceed those targets. Then on your question on the US ticker, well, we've been asked for a couple of weeks already about the US ticker, and we have been very public about the fact that we inspire ourselves greatly from strategy and from Metaplanet. And so anything that works from strategy and Metaplanet, you can know that we are looking at it extremely closely. So, of course, as a public company, when you are asked on any type of prediction or any type of looking forward statement, you cannot state anything. And as Michael Saylor says, always, you always want to keep your options open. However, we plan on being more deliberate in terms of future plans in the future by publishing reports and this kind of documents. But of course, and as I mentioned already in my presentation at Bitcoin Seoul, US ticker is definitely in our radar. And for this type of advancements, we would, of course, inform shareholders in due time. But definitely anything that strategy and Metaplanet does is definitely in the radar of the options that we can deploy as fast as possible.
I'm happy to hear that. Well, hopefully, we'll be seeing some updates soon rather than later on that note. But we'll end it with this question here, and it's the outlook for Bitcoin and just getting your personal opinion on where do you see Bitcoin going for the rest of this year, and do you see potentially the bull market being elongated into maybe 2026 and 2027?
I have a longer time horizon. And so I believe that Bitcoin will be the global store of value. I think it is already, and that traditional finance, at least part of it, the major part of it, is still sleeping on this fact. Bitcoin is the only money out there. Everything else is credit. And so I don't really spend time on predicting the Bitcoin market itself in the next few years. I believe Bitcoin is going to $5 million, $10 million, and to infinity over time, over the next 5 to 10 years. And in terms of the Bitcoin market outside of the price in fiat, well, what you see is an explosion of adoption of Bitcoin by institutions and corporations. You see that Bitcoin is the only asset the US government does not want to sell and plans to accumulate. And I think that that might come quite earlier than people think. And you see that all financial institutions in the world, 99% of systemic banks have already or are setting up digital asset custody trading capabilities to offer access to Bitcoin specifically through the ETFs, through the Bitcoin treasury companies, through Bitcoin directly into the bank accounts. And what you have seen already play out is a transfer between a few years ago, where the sizable market of Bitcoin was the checking accounts, to a place where the sizable market of Bitcoin and Bitcoin treasury companies, so through Bitcoin treasury companies and other instruments, is not the checking account, but the brokerage account where people have their 401ks and have all of their securities that they are basically transferring to Bitcoin and to Bitcoin treasury companies. And Bitcoin treasury companies in this context are going to act as the black hole for traditional finance, transforming fiat into Bitcoin and becoming the cornerstones of digital capital markets, with Bitcoin as the foundation, the core store of value, and the pristine collateral assets. And in terms of risks, what I see is the start of potential rehypothecation from the financial services industry. You will see thousands of banks starting to offer loans on Bitcoin, and over time they will try to rehypothecate. And I think that is a major potential short-term risk, not short-term in terms of now, but in terms of the evolution of the adoption of financial institutions. Everything that happens in traditional finance is likely going to happen in Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is a different beast. And so the volatility, I think, will continue to be quite high. And people should, of course, be careful out there with the trends of the adoption to make sure they don't get trapped into a form of too high leverage from the different services that are being launched. And on our side, we 121% focus on the simple playbook of raising as much capital as possible to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible in the most risk minimized way. We are not playing around with the Bitcoin. We don't want to. I say no to all the different requests that I'm getting. And why? Because the real and the most effective and the most accretive yield that we can provide and deliver is the Bitcoin per share increase over time. Everything else is too much risk, and that would also reduce our ability to raise enough and as much capital as we want. And so I think that you have thousands of companies that have Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and you have only a few of them. Strategy, Metaplanet, us, maybe a few more that are extremely focused on the Bitcoin treasury company play. This is our business model. This is our focus. And we are not trying to play around with the Bitcoin or being distracted by thousands of other projects. I think that the opportunity is so important in terms of the securitization of the Bitcoin on the corporate balance sheet through the issuance of innovative financial products to meet different pools of capital, that this is the most accretive thing we can do. And that is what we are focused on. And we believe that, to answer your question, on the next 1 to 2 years, there will be enormous opportunities in terms of capital raising, and we are being solicited in an extremely high manner by different sets of investors. And so I'm extremely bullish on Bitcoin treasury companies, and especially on the ones focusing on maximizing Bitcoin per share. And we are definitely the Bitcoin treasury company that has provided record BTC yield year to date. And of course, we have to prove our execution for the future. But that's where I'm putting all of my energy, and the entire board as well, with the team that is growing too.
Thank you for sharing your outlook for Bitcoin. We definitely agree that Bitcoin is going to be going to infinity. And it's also good to hear that you guys are ignoring the noise at the blockchain group and just focused on increasing the Bitcoin per share. But just to wrap it up here and kind of throw in our last question for our audience, where's the best place that they can find more information around the blockchain group? Is there a website, Twitter page? What's the best way for them to learn about the company? Just a little bit more if they wanted to dive even deeper.
Thank you so much first for the invitation. I enjoyed the conversation, and meeting you in person a few weeks ago was really a pleasure. I welcome all shareholders to contact me either on X at Alexandre Laizet, or on LinkedIn, or in the different medium through the website or through the press releases. You can get in touch with our media agencies that is also filtering the requests. And so you can definitely send out an email there with your specific question or request. We take those into account. And then I welcome anyone that would want to participate in the Bitcoin treasury company in some capacity to reach out as well and propose anything you would want to add to the team. And on the other side, we have a website as well, theblockchain-group.com. And there you can find our latest press releases, media appearances, and as well the different presentations that we have been publishing. And of course, we have been also requested to provide analytics on the website. So that's something we are looking at closely, and we welcome any suggestion on the matter. I want to highlight that I do check the different suggestions that are on the X communities, sometimes on the Discord one. And so we really welcome all contributions and take feedback seriously, and we work on it as fast as possible. But considering that the priority has always been to maximize Bitcoin per share, and so we need to do more work on the communication, and we are working on it, and we appreciate all feedback, and we will be improving on all of those terms as fast as possible. Thank you so much.